Hello folks, thank you for stopping by to check out my channel. This is Civil War Reports, and if you are interested in the American Civil War, this channel may be for you. So please show this channel your love. Give me a big, huge thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Today I am back on the Gettysburg battlefield, and I'm going to bring you another episode about the Battle of Gettysburg. Hello and welcome back to my channel, Civil War Reports. I am your War of the Rebellion reporter, Brian Thomas Kopak, and today we're going to continue on with my look at the Battle of Gettysburg, the series on that. We are still on the first day of the battle, July 1st, 1863, and I'm up on Oak Hill. As you can see in the background, there's most of the Eternal Peace Light, and off to my left is the area in which the morning's battle took place. Off in the distance is the railroad cut, Route 30, McPherson's barn, all the area that we've already discussed. And I got to tell you, weather-wise, we have gone from one extreme to the other. This episode has been delayed due to rain, and I am now filming on what is no doubt the hottest day of the year. Very reminiscent of the Battle of Gettysburg, July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, 1863. So I'm going to try to do as much filming as I can in the shade, not only to keep me cool, but to keep the camera equipment cool as well, because it does have a habit of shutting off if it gets too hot. So we're going to pick up where we left off. We left off with Iverson's attack. Okay, today we're going to look at Colonel ONeal's attack from Oak Hill onto basically hitting the same troops that Iverson intended to hit. That is the extreme right of the Union First Corps on the afternoon of July 1st, 1863. Also want to point out that Oak Hill here is the highest elevation on the first day's battlefield. If you haven't been to Gettysburg, the battlefield is kind of broken up into two sections. One where the battle took place on July 1st, 1863, and really no fighting took place here on the 2nd or 3rd because the Union Army retreated through the town and the battle lines were set for July 2nd and July 3rd. But we're on July 1st, 1863, we're on Oak Hill right now. So when General Ewell arrived on the field, and he was commander of the 2nd Corps Army of Northern Virginia, he had one division with him, and that was under the command of General Rhodes. And they emerged from the woods up here on Oak Hill. And if you ever heard that old saying about how the Battle of Gettysburg started with Union troops coming up from the south and northern and southern troops coming in from the north, this is the reason why. Ewell was coming down from Carlisle with orders to concentrate the army either at Gettysburg or Cashtown, but to also avoid a general engagement. Hearing the sound of the guns earlier in the day, this is where they arrived. And I'd like to point out that really when Ewell arrived, he really had three choices that I can see for him to act upon. Let's look at those three choices. So General Ewell basically had three options available to him as I see it. One was to renew the attack. The noontime lull was going on. There wasn't much fighting going on other than maybe some sporadic cannon fire. Ewell also knew that coming down from the north, just a little bit south of him here, was going to be General Early's brigade with his General Early's division with his 4 brigades. Also, General Ewell could see the 11th Corps starting to arrive, coming through town and onto the plain north of Gettysburg. They were going to hook up with the Union First Corps right. The 11th Corps left was going to hook up with the Union First Corps right. And so Ewell, option number one, renew the attack. Option number two was to not attack at all, break off, follow Lee's orders, avoid a general engagement, and head out to Cashtown as per Lee's orders, because Lee said concentrate the army either in Gettysburg or Cashtown, but to avoid a major engagement. So that was option number 2. Option number 3 was to set up a defensive position up here on Oak Hill and wait for the Union Army to attack. All of those options were available to him. If there was a fourth, I can't think of it, but at least those 3 were available to him. Ewell chose to renew the attack. So General Rhodes had 5 brigades at his disposal here on July 1st. Now, what we don't know is the order of march that they were on coming down from Carlisle, but we can kind of assume, based upon how the brigades were sent in, that Iverson, ONeal, and Daniel's brigade were some of his leading brigades on his division's march from Carlisle on July 1st. Actually, the night before, they were set up near Heidelberg, but Carlisle is where they originated from. And those are the first 3 brigades that are deployed. As I mentioned in my previous video, Iverson's men marched across the field over here to attack Union troops on Oak Ridge. Given the task of hitting the Union First Corps in flank was Colonel ONeal's brigade. And let's take a moment to talk about Colonel ONeal. All right, so let's take a look at Colonel ONeal. And yes, I am referring to him as Colonel, even though he's commanding a brigade. More so in the Army of Northern Virginia than in the Army of the Potomac. If you commanded a brigade, you pretty much were assured a general star. There was only a few, very few, colonels commanding a brigade here at Gettysburg for the Army of Northern Virginia, and Edward ONeal was one of them. And what can we say about the colonel? Well, I'm going to come out and say there's no doubt he was brave, but as a brigade commander, he was probably mediocre at best. Let's take a little look at him. He was born on September 20th, 1818, and before the war, he was a politician and a lawyer, and he did help to raise the 9th Alabama. And when that regiment was mustered into service, he was made their major. Now, it was not uncommon back then for people of prominence, people who held a prominent position in society, like a politician and or a lawyer, to help raise regiments at the start of the war, and thus be granted a rank of field grade officer. There's no doubt that he was brave. He was wounded several times during the war, including the recent Battle of Chancellorsville. Luckily, he was able to recover fast enough and take part here at the Battle of Gettysburg. Now, this is very interesting. He was commissioned, or at least recommended, for Brigadier General on June 6, 1863, right before the start of the Gettysburg campaign. However, General Rhodes, his division commander, opposed the promotion, as well as General Robert E. Lee. He also was opposed to ONeal being commissioned as a general officer. So as a result, Jefferson Davis, President Jefferson Davis, who, by the way, was also a military man. A lot of people don't realize Jefferson Davis was a West Point graduate and a veteran of the Mexican War, also did not sign off on it. So ONeal never gets his general star. But nevertheless, he is in command of a brigade here at Gettysburg, and coincidentally, and this is going to play into what happens here on July 1st, he's commanding General Rhodes's old brigade. So General Rhodes feels a personal affection to the brigade he's commanding, and like I said, that's going to be a factor here on July 1st, 1863. All right, I just want to digress for a little moment here. I'm standing next to one of the two British-made Witworth Rifled cannon here at the Gettysburg battlefield. Remember, England was, I don't know, kind of like a pseudo-ally of the Confederacy, even though they never recognized the Confederacy as a nation with a legitimate right to exist, but they were supplying the Confederacy, and it goes back to all that whole War of 1812 American Revolution thing. So any chance they had to get back at America at that point in time, they were going to take it. Interesting thing, like I said, they are British made. They're also breech loaders. And they had a range of about, from what I'm told, about 5,000 yards. There was nothing in the Union arsenal that could touch these if these things were 5,000 yards away. So, didn't have a very big bore, so it wasn't firing a very large projectile, but it would be classified by today's standards as a terror weapon. Okay, put more fright into the Union Army than actual damage. Again, there's the peace light over there. So what Rhodes wanted was basically a simultaneous attack by Iverson's men that would march across the field over there towards the Union line. The peace light is obstructing it, while ONeal's brigade came down and attacked off of Hookill and attacked the Union on their right flank. So who was in ONeal's brigade? Let's take a look at them for a moment. It consisted of the 3rd, 5th, 6th, 12th, and 26th Alabama Infantries. Now, I don't want to confuse the audience. There were basically 2/5 Alabama. If I said that right, if I didn't slip over my own words. One was the 5th Alabama Battalion, which was part of Heath's division, okay? And the other one was the 5th Alabama Infantry, which was part of Rhodes' division. 2 different divisions, 2 different corps, okay? So, let's go through that one more time. The 3rd, the 5th, keep those infantry regiments in mind, 6th, 12th, and 26th Alabama. Let's talk about what happens to the 3rd and the 5th Alabama before the attack even takes place. As I mentioned, this brigade used to be Rhodes's brigade. So he has a personal affection, personal attraction, personal commitment to this brigade. These were his men at one point in time. And he doesn't really put much faith in their new brigade commander. What Rhodes wanted was basically simultaneous attacks. Iverson coming across the field out there. To Iverson's right would be Daniel's brigade. Now, Rhodes detaches the 3rd Alabama Infantry and sends them, it places them between Iverson and Daniels, okay, out of ONeal's direct command. What he will do with the 5th Alabama Regiment is he will hold them in reserve now, and basically place them behind ONeal's other 3 and kind of off-centered to fill in any gaps between ONeal and Dole's brigade. And ONeal is going to claim that he had no knowledge of this happening, that Rhodes never informed him. That may or may not be true. But what is certain is that 2 of his regiments are taken away from him at the start of the battle. And he is going to attack the Union right flank with 3 of his infantry regiments. Let's take a look at what happens. Now, according to ONeal, again, he doesn't know that those 2 regiments were taken away from him. He claims that once the artillery had finished its job and was redeployed off of Hookill, he then began his attack against the Union right flank down there on Oak Ridge. Now, I've said this before, I'm going to say it again, it bears repeating. I've been told by several licensed battlefield tour guides that that part of the Gettysburg National Military Park is probably the most altered terrain on the battlefield. So ONeal steps off with 3 of his 5 regiments, and during the course of their advance, and after they've engaged, General Rhodes comes over to check on his old brigade, particularly the 5th Alabama Regiment, which was again held in reserve, only to find ONeal not with the 3 regiments of his brigade engaged in an attack, but actually with the 5th Alabama Regiment, which did not sit well with General Rhodes. And we can look in hindsight and say, well, General Rhodes, why did you launch your attack with at least 2 of your most questionable brigade commanders? Iverson, who didn't get along with his men because he was a Georgian and that was a North Carolina brigade, and ONeal, who was, again, mediocre at best in terms of a brigade commander. And needless to say, ONeal's initial attack was repulsed. And ONeal, well, again, probably mediocre at best. Now, of course, later in the day, the Union troops would be driven from there, but it would also require the help of the rest of Rhodes' brigade, along with the arrival of General Early's division. General Early's division, one of my favorite Confederate division commanders. I can't wait to get to that part of the battlefield and talk about General Early some more. All right. Well, before we end, let's take a look at what happened to Colonel ONeal after the Battle of Gettysburg. The Battle of Gettysburg was not kind to Colonel ONeal, and his performance was mediocre, lackluster, fair at best. He wouldn't last much longer with the Army of Northern Virginia. Basically, his performance here left much to be desired. Not to say that his troops were not good fighting men. They certainly were. They just had bad leadership. And after the Battle of Gettysburg, General Lee had had enough of Colonel ONeal, and he was transferred to the Western Theater, where he served a variety of roles for the duration of the war. At one point, he was sent back to recruit troops, which I guess was something he was good at, considering his actions at the start of the war. He did serve at one point as an acting brigade commander, but the general's star would elude him for the duration of the war. He would never receive it. And his performance as an acting brigade commander was maybe, I guess you could say, slightly better than his performance here at Gettysburg. He was certainly brave, as I mentioned. He was wounded several times during the war. There's no doubt about his bravery, no doubt about his commitment to the Confederate cause, but he was simply in over his head as a brigade commander. And so he would serve out the war, but he would never, ever make a brigade commander in terms of getting the general's star. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode. It's a hot one out here, I got to tell you. Can't wait to replenish myself with some water I got in the car. And sorry this took so long, but like I said, Mother Nature was quite fickle. And we went from one extreme, which was rain, to extreme heat, to the point where I didn't want to leave the camera in the exposed sun. So sorry for the delay. Just give you a quick health update. Started physical therapy on June 12th. It seemed with each and every one of those cancer shots I got, there was some side effect to it. And the final one has created a lot of problems with my sciatica. Promised my daughter I'd put the gentleman's walking stick to the side. Also promised my physical therapist that. And I'm just going to walk on my own power. No crutches, no walking stick, no nothing. Also, please folks, if you know of any stories involving boards of ed, school districts, changing their curriculum to make the Confederacy look in a very bad light, I would like to expose those people in a future episode. So if you know of any stories, please send me the link in the comments below. Would really appreciate that. All right, well, for Civil War Reports, I am your War of the Rebellion reporter, Brian Thomas Kopak. Thank you for watching, and until next time. And if you like what you saw today, please hit the subscribe button, give a thumbs up. Also, notify your friends, let them know about this channel, and ask them to subscribe as well. If you like, you may leave a question or a comment below, and perhaps I will answer your question in a future episode of Civil War Reports. Until next time, please keep the history alive.